This might be the most intense book about in-home caretaking I've ever read. This book is about an obsessed and mentally ill superfan, survival, and a great example of why work from home is still unmatched. Today we're talking about Misery. Misery focuses on two people mainly. Paul Sheldon, who is a famous, well-renowned author for his Misery series, and his number one fan, rescuer, and resident strongwoman, Annie Wilkes. Paul is taken in after a horrible car accident and nursed relatively back to health by Annie over the course of months and months and months. Throughout his stay, Paul quickly begins to realize just about how unhinged Annie is. He comes to learn that she has a dark past as a nurse who loves killing as much as she enjoys force-feeding soup from dirty mop buckets. Now, this was my introduction to Stephen King novels. It was kind of popped into my head as something that I wanted to read because Misery, the movie adaptation, starring James Caan, is one of my all-time favorite movies. This book, despite only focusing on two people for a great majority of the time, it never slows down. There's a constant tension that just does not leave the room, so to speak. You are left wondering, especially after someone who has previously watched the film, you kind of understand like where it's going to go, or at least you think you do. But even if you've seen the movie, the way that Stephen King writes this still kind of has you wondering if Paul's going to actually make it out of this situation. It is bleak. It is way more bleak than the movie. It's a rough read. For instance, in the movie, there's one part where Annie hobbles Paul Sheldon, where she takes a sledgehammer and she cracks both of his feet using a sledgehammer and a board. So much more rough to read. Minor spoilers here. She doesn't break his ankles. She straight up saws that fucking thing off. Like, there's nothing left. Leaves it in a bucket for him. This brutal scene lasts pages, and it leaves you as a reader feeling hopeless. Like, there's no way that Paul is possibly getting out of this situation. And there's like a few times where you think like he's about to get out of it. There might be a small glimmer of hope, but then that glimmer of hope is then attacked and ran over by a lawnmower in the form of a local police officer. Much like in the movie, Annie does end up getting hers. Paul Sheldon does end up force-feeding her his rewritten novel of Misery that Annie was forcing him to write because she was unhappy that he was ending the book series. But even after his escape, you see that Paul is deeply scarred and traumatized from his interactions with Annie. They show him later on, after he has recovered, his mangled legs, or what is left of them. He's back in New York. He is back writing books. And again, much like in the movie, they kind of show what happens after, and they kind of touch on the trauma that he experienced while under Annie Wilkes' care. But the book just goes into such greater detail of the lingering effects that he has from essentially his imprisonment with Annie Wilkes. He is hallucinating. He is terrified still after this. Even after she is eventually disposed of by Paul, in a very brutal way. Again, I try not to be one of those people where it's like, oh, the book is always better than the movie. But this is one where if you haven't read the book, read the book adaptation, because it does dwarf the movie in suspense and action and even like pacing. It was just an incredible piece of writing. I am so glad that I read this. I'm glad that it was my first Stephen King book. If you're looking to get into Stephen King, I highly recommend reading this. Now, I will say the watching the movie did help me with the inner monologue, right? Like every time I was reading as Annie Wilkes, it was that annoying voice and tone that Kathy Bates does throughout the film that just grates on me so much, but at the same time kind of like makes me feel uneasy because you know like how just batshit crazy she is as a human being. You know, trying to keep spoilers to a minimum, but if you haven't yet, go out, grab this book. I'd love to keep doing book reviews like this. I'd like to go more in depth on more books that I've read. If you'd like to see more detailed explanations of the plot, let me know. I was also kind of thinking about maybe doing a series on comparisons between book and film, and maybe where the film falls short of the book and like kind of how they stacked up, and but anything like that you would like to see from me in this channel in the future, let me know, and I would like to kind of build this channel together based off of what all of you would like to see. Until next time, I am Jake, and I'll see you around.